Vasel. Welcome to Board Game Breakfast. Now, I said last week we would be a day late this week, and we are, and I apologize. We're actually more than a day late because we just came back from Origins Game Fair, which was a lot of fun, and a huge thank you to all of those of you who came up and said hello to us. We had a lot of folks come by and talk to us during the week that we were there. It was great fun. It was a great convention. And, we come back and it's like, all right, it's time to get ready for Dice Tower Convention, which is only a week and 4 days away or so. It seems it's pretty close. So that's coming up in the future, and Gen Con's not too far beyond that. However, at the Dice Tower channel, we still have lots of things to talk about. And after Origins, so many more things to talk about. Now, because we're going to be doing a lot of different Origins videos and such over the next few days, there's not going to be a live Q&A. Besides, we did several live Q&As during our feed last week, during those live feeds. So there won't be any live Q&A this week, but we will have lots of videos. I'll talk a little bit more about those later on. First, let's get to the news. I often hear that Dice Masters is a dying game. People use evidence that they can see. Well, if I can use evidence I saw at Origins, there certainly is a ton of people still playing the game. And so they've announced some more things. First, they've announced a new set simply called Batman, coming out in February. And also Iron Man and War Machine. This is an entry point for the game. So if you've never played Dice Masters, you can get in with this. There's not, as far as I can tell, the little extra gravity feed packs. It's basically just a starter set, a set for people to jump in. I don't know if that means it's a complete contained set like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. If so, that would be pretty cool, though. Speaking of Origins, the Origins Awards were announced. Now, there's a caveat. I am on the board game committee for Origins Awards, but I can tell you that there's been a lot of effort to improve them in past years, and it is a continuing, ongoing thing. And in fact, for the biggest change from last year to this year was that Origins, they basically cut a whole pile of awards, a lot of useless stuff, really. And so it's down, I think, like 7 or 8 categories. So they take all these categories. There's a winner for each category. Then there's a Game of the Year, which is picked the highest rated one from all the categories. This year, that game was Codenames, which beat out Star Wars, I said, because the role-play game of the year was Star Wars Force of Destiny. The miniatures game was Star Wars Armada. And the board game was Star Wars Imperial Assault. But the family game was Codenames, which beat them all out. Card game was Seven Wonders Duel. So Asmodee kind of had a sweep of the Origins Awards to some degree. Speaking of Origins, they released their numbers, and their numbers were actually down 200 from last year, and yet it felt like there was more people. And that's because of number manipulation and numbers and things like that. Every year at Origins, there is a Star City Magic Tournament, which last year brought in over 3,000 people. That tournament was removed. Now, that tournament brought in 3,000 people, but many of them came in for one day. Just their time to do the tournament, they stayed at the tournament, and they were gone. So Origins turnstiles were up by 8,000 because while there was those 3,000 people left, they were almost completely covered by 3,000 gamers who came in for all 4 days of Origins. So that's pretty cool. Essentially, while those exact numbers will show the convention went down a little bit, if you were there, it certainly felt busier, and in my opinion, that's growth. Asmodee has announced a new game called Dream Home. This is about drafting, making the best possible home that you can make. It originally comes from Rebel. Looks good. It's a theme that's different and unique. I like it. IDW has announced a new preferred retailer plan. They'll be following other companies as they try to make the local gaming store more relevant. Container, which is the number one choice when people try to disprove the Vasel's Law, where I say every great game will eventually be reprinted. Well, now Container falls under that law. It's going to be reprinted by Mercury Games. Stone Age Junior has won the Kinderspiel des Jahres 2016. The Spiel des Jahres is the game of the year. Kinderspiel is the kids' game of the year. So Stone Age Junior won. Congratulations. They announced that one early for whatever reason. The other ones, they wait till later and announce them at the same time. Grail Games has announced Medici, the card game, designed by Rainer Knizia. Medici, the board game, has been around for over a decade. It's an auction game about getting different goods. This looks to be like a card game version. I'm sure that will be very popular, coming out at Gen Con. And finally, there's going to be a Monopoly musical. Now, it's still in the planning stages, and I'm sure people are already screaming and throwing up their arms and blah, 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 how horrible, etc. Me, I don't care. I like musicals. Why can't Monopoly be the basis for a good musical? There's all sorts of musicals based on really weird, odd topics that then turn out to be an extremely popular musical for whatever reason. I don't think the topic is good. It comes down to the music and how interesting the musical itself is. So we'll have to wait and see on that one. All right, let's keep going.
Happy breakfast, everybody. I thought that Kickstarter might slow down around convention season, but boy, was I wrong. So let's get going. If you want to jump into Slush Fund 2, you've got to do so right away because Dr. Finns chose to run a one-week campaign. From the designer of Biblios, Slush Fund 2 is an update to an older game in which two players compete for the most political influence. Contribute to politicians to advance your agenda, bribe journalists, steal, and even engage in espionage. This is essentially an area control game in which politicians are the areas you're trying to control using a combo of money cards and special cards that let you reveal, move, and even exchange cards. Players have synchronous decks, but you can also create a slush fund pile that you can draw from, but you risk having to pay penalty points later for the cards in your hand. Backers also become 3-month members of Dr. Finn's Kickstarter Club that grants some discounted game prices and other benefits. You can get a copy of Slush Fund 2 for a pledge of just $15. Days of Ire, Budapest 1956, is a cooperative game based on the events in post-World War II Hungary in which the people revolted against the communist leadership. Also playable as a 1 versus many or solo game, Days of Ire has players collecting cards and fighters to defeat the challenges that arise. Cards have command points and abilities that Soviets can use to play events or move tanks. Revolutionaries will use their action points, including using revolutionary cards and fighters to resolve events, which is essentially kind of a set collection element to the game. If the revolutionaries can survive 7 days to the ceasefire with the city still intact, they win. Days of Ire has a nice pedigree as it's from the designers of Redacted and features Kwanchai Moria art. The game looks highly thematic and you can get a copy for a pledge of $49 plus shipping. Golden Age Games is bringing us Airlines, the golden age of aviation. Set in the 1950s, players will start and grow their own airlines. Airlines is a streamlined pick up and deliver game that has literally just the pick up and deliver moments, but none of the interim transportation effort. Players manipulate a unique wheel to ensure that they get the passengers they need while denying their opponents the passengers that they need. Depending on the variable goals of the game, you may be building new terminals or hotels or upgrading your planes. Speaking of which, the game includes some really cool modular airplane models that literally change as you improve your plane. Seriously, look at this thing. Of other interest is that there are 2 versions of the game available, a simpler gateway depth and a heavier, more strategic version. The lighter aviator version of the game takes a pledge of $45, while the heavier mogul version, which includes the aviator version as well as solo play rules, takes a pledge of $65. In Far East War 1592, players are vying for control of what is currently the Korean peninsula, but in the age of the samurai. The winner is the player who controls the most territories at the end of the game. Players use an action rondelle to manage their resources and troops, and there are event points on that rondelle that will trigger, and all players have to respond to whatever comes up. There are 34 different generals that players can attach to their regiments, and each of those has unique abilities that contribute to play or battle. Battle is resolved using custom dice, and this campaign also features one of the most elaborate assembled dice towers that I have ever seen. Some of you may be interested in backing just for this engineering and design showpiece, and there's a $30 pledge level for that. But you can get a copy of this historically based game for a pledge of $60 plus shipping. And last but not least, Mayday Games is bringing us Nerdy Inventions, which was created by the designer of Flip City. This is a quick dice game in which players are trying to complete different inventions using dice and leveraging their other inventions. This is a compact little game with a nice bit of depth for its size and simplicity because along with strategically using your completed invention's special abilities, you can also manipulate the invention line to try to get the most points. There's a wee bit of set collection involved too, because you can get bonus points for having all the different types of inventions. The art style has a cute steampunk aesthetic, and I'm really happy that Mayday is making this Taiwanese game available on a wider scale. You can get a copy of Nerdy Inventions for just $18. Okay, that's all I've got for you this episode. Hopefully something caught your eye. And until next time, I hope you have a wonderful week.
Greetings to all of you out there in Dice Tower Nation. Now, a lot of you have been bugging me on the internet and saying, Jared, June 20th is the 41st anniversary of when the movie Jaws came to theaters. So what are you going to do to celebrate on Board Game Breakfast? I'm glad you asked, because today I have some solutions. In fact, we're going to do a deep dive into my top 41 shark-related games. First off in our deep dive is Deep Sea Divers. Games Magazine promises that it is going to be the family game of 1985. Secondly, we've got a game simply titled Shark. This game is from 1970, so it predates Jaws and the shark frenzy created there. Did board games adequately capture the spirit of Jaws before Jaws? Find out in Shark. Next up is Sharks with Lasers, which proves with only 4 ratings on Board Game Geek that just because something caused a minor chuckle on Austin Powers doesn't mean that it would make a great board game. Next up is Dr. Shark, because he didn't go to 6 years of evil medical school just to be called Mr. Shark. Next is Sharknado the board game, which is, I don't even care at this point. Next up is, wait a minute, hang on. Dr. Shark was designed by Antoine Bauza and Bruno Cathala in 2011. That looks like that is actually a legitimate game. How come I have never heard of this? Have any of you played Dr. Shark? Johnny, get me a copy of Dr. Shark immediately. Next is Sharks and Jets, which I assume has something to do with sharks fighting airplanes. Next we have Shark Island, a co-op game designed by Richard Lanius and my friend Pete Sheary. Whoa, hang on a second. This actually looks amazing. Apparently there can be a shark game that isn't a joke. Unfortunately, it won't get wide release until 2017. Well, there we go. How are you celebrating the 41st anniversary of Jaws? Are you playing board games for it? Are you playing shark-related board games? Are you going to need a bigger board gaming table?
So many people have asked me why I like to do board game makeovers. Why do I like to do what I do to games? Well, this is part of it. I follow a law. That's right. It's called Mike's Board Game Makeover Law. And this is what it says. Irregardlessly, whether a board game is cattywampus or just a little bit discombobulated, indubitably there's always room for improvement because a board game without change is inconceivable. Did you see what I did there? I interjected my top 5 favorite words into that law, but one of them is not even a word. And to make sure the law that you create sounds like a law, you need to run it backwards. Read it backwards and see what it sounds like. This is what mine sounds like. Inconceivable change without game board is because improvement for room is always there. Indubitably discombobulated a little bit, or cattywampus is whether a game board irregardlessly. See, that makes sense. To not read it backwards, but to read it forwards. And in this situation, Mike's Board Game Makeover Law is a law because I follow it. A law that is not followed is not a law. It is a mere suggestion. But if you follow a law, then it is a law. Thanks for listening to Mike's Board Game Makeover Law, and we'll see you next time.
Hi everybody, welcome to the 101. Well, what a week it's been. Descent versus Arcadia Quest. And it was a pretty epic battle. Believe it or not, I held on as long as I could because all that separated these two games was 4 votes. 4 votes, and the winner is Descent. Descent moves into our finals. Now, we have one more semifinal. and I got it right, semi-final this week. It is Doom versus Shadows of Brimstone. Interesting matchup. A game with a lot of depth, Shadows of Brimstone, and then Dune, which is actually where they got Descent from. So I wonder if it comes down to these two and an epic battle between the two, or does Shadow of Brimstone take on probably one of the most iconic games of all time, Descent? There's only one way to find out. You guys put in your votes at NovaPrime860 or leave them in the comments below. And of course, you can always leave them on my channel, Rob Oren on YouTube here. Now, the winner of our cool stuff. So of course, I had to pick a name that was almost impossible to say. And it's Maria Satanasova. There we go, I got it out. And she said that she wanted Arcadia Quest. And that it was because it was so playable and so quick to play and very enjoyable, fun game for her. Well, unfortunately, it didn't move on, but she did get a $10 gift certificate. So with that said, that's it for this week on the Painting Miniatures 101. Thanks so much, and we'll see you next week.
So what can you expect to see from the Dice Tower this week? Well, we have a lot of reviews that are coming, but I don't imagine most of them will hit this week. You will see a review of the new Royals game version from Arcane Wonders, part of the Dice Tower Essentials. You'll see that this week. But for the most part this week, you're going to see a pile of videos from Origins. We recorded the Origins Award, we did a live show at Origins, and we did lots and lots of interviews with publishers and designers talking about upcoming games. So many of those are going to be coming out this week. And that's pretty much going to fill up our week, but there is lots of content that's coming. The Dice Tower itself is being launched about the same time as Board Game Breakfast, which was our live show we did at Origins. And there's plenty of other great shows that are all part of the Dice Tower network. You can find those at dicetower.com and check them out, cross-reference them. If you've never listened to some before, try a new podcast this week. There's some great ones. We had a chance to meet many of our Dice Tower network folk at Origins. It was a lot of fun. So that's all that's coming out this week. Let's keep going.
Chaz Marler of Pair of Dice Paradise here. I'm so naive. This past week, after months of sporadic gaming sessions, my game group finally completed Pandemic Legacy. And so, with endorphins from this achievement of ours still coursing through my veins, I rushed to the Board Game Geek website, where Pandemic Legacy is currently ranked as the #1 board game of all time, to catalog my plays and perhaps even indulge myself in submitting my own rating for the game on their scale of 1 to 10. Well, when I arrived at the Pandemic Legacy webpage, I was not surprised to see that other gamers had already given their own rating to the game. But what did surprise me was a portion of those ratings which seemed uncharacteristically, artificially low. Every board game will have a range of ratings from 1 to 10, and that's only natural, since every game cannot appeal to every gamer's taste. But my eyes were opened when I discovered a small population of several dozen wise Board Game Geek users who bravely bestowed a 1-star rating upon Pandemic Legacy in order to combat the undeserved high ranking that the game has received from nearly 8,000 other, obviously uninformed, voters. The comments that accompany their 1-star ratings demonstrate just how knowledgeable these grizzled gamers are, as they were able to rate this game without even playing it. With comments like, "I've seen it, but not played it, definitely a 1. I just want Twilight Struggle to be first place, smiley emoticon. 1 star, simply because this game does not deserve its place at the top of the charts." They demonstrate how lucky we are that these experts are here to police the board game preferences of the internet masses, sacrificing their time and energy to prevent the universe from just spiraling out of control, which is certainly what would happen if they were not here to counterbalance those who, like me, would mistakenly just like this board game. So, thank you, Board Game Rating Police. Without your altruistic agenda, I may have given Pandemic Legacy a rating ignorantly based on my enjoyment, instead of based on the enlightened worldview of what actually qualifies as fun. Now I see that I'd be a buffoon to have enjoyed Pandemic Legacy. But, Board Game Rating Police, even if I am a buffoon, you can now consider me to be one of your own.
Hi everyone, and welcome to another segment of Board Gaming with Colleagues with To Die For Games. I'm Mandy, the board gaming pinup girl.
I'm Tracy, the gaming maven.
And I'm Steph, the games teacher. You know, it's been such a stressful day. I really could use maybe a gameplay during
Lunchtime! So today we're going to be playing Nitwit by Matt Leacock. Plays 2 to 8 players. It was published by Z-Man Games and it takes about 15 minutes to play. The objective of this game is to gain as many points by creating really cool words or phrases, getting some bonus buttons, or a combination of the two.
Players will each get a loop of yarn with a clothespin attached to it and spools based on number of players. A player will play a loop around an existing spool, although obviously first player will not, because there will be no spools. Then what you will do is you will place a spool in a segment that doesn't have a spool, and then you will attach a word to your loop, and next player plays until all the spools have been played out.
Once all the spools are in position, the design is complete and the answer phase can begin. Simultaneously, all players will begin filling in their answers on their answer sheet. Each answer will be a word or short phrase that combines concepts of each of the words surrounding each individual spool. Once a player is finished answering or feels that they no longer wish to provide answers, they take the topmost button from the button pile, which will give them extra bonus points. Play proceeds until all of the buttons are picked up by all the players, and then everyone must stop, and we proceed to the scoring phase. For scoring, you will look at each individual spool and score points depending on the number of words associated with that spool.
So, I like this game. I love the art. I'm a seamstress. I know it's not really talking about sewing per se, but it appealed to me. The spools were nice. And anything to do with words. I love making up words, crazy words. For me, that's fun, and it makes everyone kind of work together really well. So, I enjoyed it.
I grew up in the era of Scrabble and Boggle, so making words out of these different hints is kind of cool, and of course the theme really appeals to me. It's very tactile, and I'm a crafter, so.
Exactly.
I really like word games. I like the fact that this plays a large number of players, so it's a good party game. If people are not really into wordplay or have difficulty with, concepts and things like that, then it may not be for them, but otherwise I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, so, on that note, we're going to get to making some crazy phrases and words. So until next time, bye.
Hey everybody, Steve here with another AFR 2-minute drill. So over the past couple of weeks, I've received 2 games that were originally campaigns on Kickstarter. Both Dawn of the Zeds and Soccer City have hit my gaming table, and the quality of these games is really fantastic, and it's part of an upward trend that I'm noticing in the games that are coming out from Kickstarter. I've been really happy to see several sports-themed games see the light of day thanks to a successful campaign, including Bottom of the Ninth from Dice Hate Me Games, which also just had a successful campaign to get an expansion out, and then also Baseball Highlights from Eagle Griffin Games, who had the base game launched on Kickstarter and then has had a few expansions launched from traditional publishing means. And I'm really happy to see games like this see the light of day, games that otherwise may not have made it to market, and especially with a sports-themed game where it's perhaps catering to a niche, but then once they get out there, other people find that they really enjoy it. So that's been my experience with Kickstarter lately, and I'm curious to hear what your experience has been and if you've seen a change from when Kickstarter first launched. All right, that is all for now. For all of your sports board game news, be sure to tune into AFR every Tuesday evening. Until then, my name's Steve. Get out there, have fun, play games, and I'll see you after further review.
Humor is a hard thing, right? Humor is something that they say, comedy is hard work, and there's lots of reasons for that all over the place, and there's comedy on the internet, there's comedy in person. But comedy is kind of an interesting thing to me because I like to laugh, I like to have fun, and I like things that are funny. But what exactly is funny? What is, the humor? Because everyone has a completely different sense of humor. There are things that I will find hilarious that my wife just rolls her eyes at. There are things that she will laugh at that I'm like, that didn't even make me smile. There are people I meet where we have different senses of humor. And in board gaming, humor is certainly something that whole games are based about, whether those games are based on kind of raunchy humor like Cards Against Humanity, or whether it's based on a geeky humor like Munchkin. And even a lot of the games behind me, they aren't necessarily humorous, but they are humorous for unintentional reasons or whatever when we play them. And when we play games and maybe we like to make jokes. Now, I've met gaming groups before where making jokes was not appropriate pretty much ever because they took the game very seriously, and as they played it, it was all about the game, focus on the game, play your best, nothing else mattered. And while I don't really like that, and I would prefer not to play with those groups if possible, I certainly can respect that. But the idea of making jokes and things is an intriguing one to me because it often comes across with crosshairs of offending other people. What is an appropriate joke and what is not an appropriate joke? Well, you can ask 10 different people and you'll probably get 10 different things. Even if, there are some things like Cards Against Humanity where almost everybody will agree that the jokes that are contained in that game are inappropriate, and yet you will have a division over whether they should be used at all. Some people will say, well, yes, they're inappropriate, but who cares? It's just in this game group. And even in that group, there are jokes that were offensive to some people while other jokes weren't. For example, there were jokes about rape in Cards Against Humanity, the initial version, and they eventually took those out because of the outcry against that. What is appropriate to be funny about and what is not? Often that will depend on the person themselves. There might be a joke in a game like when we play Flashpoint Fire Rescue and the cat is in the fire and the cat got burned up, and maybe I'll make a joke about that, but someone might have actually lost a cat recently, or they really love cats, or they can't stand that any animal can take any sort of suffering, and so that will bother them. And I'm saying, well, no, I don't really want to see a cat get burned up, and so you can that possibility of someone getting upset over humor is very probable. Many games that I've played, everyone is having a good time and we're joking back and forth, but those jokes for someone else might not be funny at all. So how do you deal with this? I always find this sort of thing kind of intriguing, but sometimes it feels like a minefield, right? You could say, well, you should never make jokes about this, and this. But then you might be okay with making jokes about this, and this, which I might have a problem with. And there have been times before where there has been comedy or humor in games that I found offensive. I said, I can't believe that this was put into a game. And sometimes it's because it's something that's very personally happened to me. And I'm like, wow, well, this happened to me in my life, and that person thinks it's funny. But I might be doing the same thing to somebody else with a humor that I find. So on a personal level, I think it's important to find out the group that you're playing with. Sure, everyone can find maybe humor in the, hey, I slipped on a banana peel and fell, or hey, the Munchkin geeky humor. But you never know, someone might not. And I think it's important to feel out those who you're playing with. And if they don't appreciate the type of humor that you might be making fun of or laughing at, well, first of all, they probably shouldn't play the game if the game is based on that sort of humor. But at the same time, you need to be sensitive, I think, to those around you and try to get, maybe you say, well, this is certainly appropriate to joke about. politics, for example. This is a funny politic game. Well, that person might take politics very seriously, and some of the funny things about maybe a real-life candidate might very much offend them. And so you have to be very cautious in that regard. And so I found that I have to be very careful when I'm playing a game, and I'm like, oh, this is funny, haha, and I see the person that I'm playing with is not enjoying it at all. I played a political game with someone one time, and it was the Republicans versus Democrats, and I took one of the sides, doesn't matter which one, and I really got into the rhetoric, and I was just joking, having a good time. But the other person did not feel that way, and I could sense that they were very uncomfortable with me making those rhetoric type jokes. I was just getting into the theme of the game, so I pulled back very quickly as to not offend them. But I might be with somebody else, and with Republican and Democrat in a game, I could easily switch sides and take the extreme rhetoric of either side and kind of make a joke out of it, but someone else might not find that funny. Even trash talking, which is a sort of humor where you're like, you're going to fall, you're going to fail. That is, for me and the guys that I play with, something we do all the time. But I played with people before where I started trash talking a little bit, and they instantly did not find that humorous. So you have to pull back. Where this gets even trickier is for us here at the Dice Tower, because we will record live plays or live shows where our humor back and forth, and we are very comfortable with our levels of humor and joking back and forth. And if something is very offensive, I can go to someone and say, hey, I found that a bit offensive, and we can deal with that. But when it's live and back and forth, and we'll say, you're so silly, you're not smart at all, or something, and someone else will be like, oh, I can't believe you guys are so mean to each other. You have to realize that the humor that you see in that group, they are comfortable with. There are groups who play, there's a show on the internet where there's a bunch of drunk people who play board games, and I don't find that humor even remotely funny. But I can't go in there and be like, you guys shouldn't do this. That's their humor, and that's for their audience. The Dice Tower is very family friendly. We try to keep our humor in this show under a PG level. And so someone else might have what they call edgier humor, although I would like to argue about that. And so people will watch that, and I can't really go and get offended at that because I don't actually have to watch that. And you also have to know the dynamic between two people. I don't know if you've ever met a couple and you're like, do they love each other? And then later on you're like, oh, they really do love each other, but they like that back and forth. Other people do not. So this is kind of one where I'm not coming down really strongly on this. I love to hear comments in this section. When does humor become inappropriate? At what level does, like me joking with my friend about something, the joke of what's 500 lawyers at the bottom of the sea joke, it might be funny to me and my friend, but if we're playing with a lawyer who really gets offended about that stuff, that might be a problem to them. When is humor appropriate? When is it inappropriate? How do you deal with it when someone at the table really has a hard time with the humor that you just mentioned? So there's a lot of different variables in there. We'll probably do a back talk on this at some point in the future. What do you think? Let me know in the comments. Humor. It's hard to do, but sometimes even harder to watch.
Hi guys, my name is Dave Luza and this is Playing the News. Tunnels closed, streets flooded and kids floating outside on air mattresses. In my part of Europe we are experiencing more and more cloud bursts. It is a sudden aggressive rainstorm in a short amount of time limited to a small geographical area. Cloudbursts occur when a rain cloud is unable to release its water due to the flow of hot air coming in from below, creating a denser and denser cloud until the moment that the cloud is no longer able to retain the water inside it, and just like water in a paper bag, at some point it just lets go. Experts say that with the Earth heating up, cloudbursts will become more frequent and in time more severe. This week I am playing a game that teaches us how to cross a flooded street using stones and planks. This week I am playing River Dragons. In River Dragons, players try to be the first one to have their figure reach the other side. They do this each round by choosing 5 action cards secretly and putting them in sequence. Then simultaneously, one at a time, the cards are revealed and the actions are carried out. Place or remove stones and planks, move or strategically block one of the other players. I find the regular version small and fiddly, and I'm very happy that I've got my hands on a big version of the game. River Dragons is great fun for the whole family. If you want to know more games that use the same principle of planning ahead, then please check out my YouTube channel. My name is Dave Luza. Thanks for watching.
Hello and welcome, Niels' Brettspiele, and today in the best and the worst we are talking about Blood and Fortune from Exist Games. My favorite part of Blood and Fortune is drawing and drafting. So when you draft and draw your roll cards here, you have 15 different roll cards, you get 2 on your hands, take a look at it, choose wisely and put it face down in front of you. So do the other players as well. So and then when it's your turn, you pick a card, but not your own, you pick a different one. So you know 2 cards, you have the knowledge about this card and that card, but in general you are not picking up your own card. So when you pick these 2 cards and make the decision, you have to make the decision what card could either benefit one of my friends really heavily, or is the lowest damage to me, or whatever. So you have a first layer of making a decision when you face down one of these 2 cards and then pick a different card. The worst part on that game for me is the scoring track. So the scoring track is this card here, and you push your card like this. So this means here it matches here with the 3. It's now you have a score of 3. Now you have a score of 9. Now you have a score of 12. On the other side it goes up to 39 points. However, this is a really crazy way of tracking your scoring points and not my favorite at all. Yeah, that was my personal best and worst for Blood and Fortune, and see you next time. My name is Niels, Brettspiele. See you. Bye.
Sometimes I'll get a game out and I'll read the rules of the game and it will say you need to play for this length of time. Like, no, we're just going to be playing 1 round of the game. And today we're talking about games that I don't play nearly as long as the game says that I should. So here we go. Number 5 is Formula D. Now, Formula D is best with a 3-lap race. It really is, and I almost never do it. We almost always play 1, maybe 2 laps, because 3 just lengthens the game to a point where we don't want to play it. And there's a lot of racing games in this where I'll say, oh, we're just going to play fewer laps than it says. Because while in real life, 500 laps might take a few hours, in board gaming, it usually takes much longer. Number 4 is Kamisado. I love Kamisado, this abstract strategy game where when you move a piece, the color you land on is the piece your opponent moves. And it actually is a little bit more interesting if you play multiple matches and then you have pieces that can move shorter and they get upgraded to different levels. But that really drags the game out, and we just usually find ourselves playing 6 matches of normal Kamisado instead. Number 3 is Concept. Does anyone even play this as a game? We just take turns going back and forth. Okay, I'm in charge this time. I'm going to be showing things off. Okay, your turn. What? Was there points? What are we talking about anymore? Number 2 is Telestrations, or Eat Poop You Cat, which is the original form. Yes, there's rules in the game. I'm not sure anybody follows them. We just draw pictures and we keep going till everyone's kind of bored of the game, and then we move on. And in fact, there are many party games that can be put into this category. Those are just some of the ones that I found interesting. In fact, number 1 is not a specific game, but it's pretty much every trick-taking game I've ever played. When you play a trick-taking game, you play it, boom, 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 and you keep score. And most of the time I play these, will say the game ends when one team gets 500, the game ends with this. And I know that competitive people play these games so that when they do reach these very high scores, that's when the game's over. But most of the time we're like, okay, we played 3 rounds, we're good. We played 2 rounds, we're good. Almost always happens when I'm playing trick-taking games. We're playing them for fun, and we don't play them nearly as long as the game wants us to, or the official rules do. What do you think? What games did I miss? I know I've missed some. Probably let me know in the comments.
Board Game Social, hosted by Dean Leggett.
Greetings everyone, this is Ian with Board Game Social, bringing you our third and final installment in the Boy Scouts of America Game Design Merit Badge. Here with some tips and tricks and advice to help you through this process. So tip number one is to limit the size of the group that you're going to work with. 4 to 5 scouts is a very good number because it allows you to give them that one-on-one attention, and also when you get to that play testing phase, it gives you an opportunity for everyone to get some equal time and to give their project the amount of attention that they deserve. Second tip would be to get them to think small. All right, I know it sounds bad, but you want them to keep their projects very manageable. Those scouts that are able to think small and give up those grandiose dreams, those are the scouts that are going to finish the project, and those are the scouts that are going to have the most rewarding experience doing it. The third tip or piece of advice would be to have some gateway games available to reinforce those vocabulary terms, those mechanisms that you introduced earlier in the project. So games like Get Bit, Age of War, The Duke, Rhino Hero, those are all very simple, quick games that will reinforce those notions that you already instilled in them earlier on in the project. And then the fourth piece and the final piece and the most important piece is to don't be intimidated, just get out there and do it. This will be a very rewarding experience for you. The kids will enjoy it, but you will probably enjoy it more than they do. So until next time, from Board Game Social, take care of yourselves and your loved ones.
Convention season, mother lovers! Hello again, Matthew Jude here, and it's convention season, and although there's currently days until the next UK Gaming Expo, many of you over the coming months might find yourself at a convention somewhere spanning this great green world of ours, and while perusing those aisles, searching for that game that's going to change everything, surprise yourself, come out of your comfort zone and try something new. Look, when I started playing board games, I knew what kind of games I'd like. Dice throwing, crit causing, kill my enemies, destroy! But, you know, that didn't actually turn out to be the case. I found myself enjoying thinly themed Euro brain burners with agonizing decisions and tiny radishes. I just want to urge you, wherever you are, when someone asks you to try a game that you know you won't like, just try it. You might surprise yourself. I've played games that I knew I wouldn't like, and I was wrong.
Imagine what you'll know tomorrow.
I'm Matthew Jude, this is Dead Last, and I'll see you next week.
Imagine there's a board game that's coming fresh from France.
Imagine there's a party-style game for up to 8 players from Cocktail Games.
In the box you'll find 61 transparent cards which you'll space out around the table. There's also a deck of 65 Enigma cards which you place to the side, and a collection of score tokens which you can leave in the box. You choose a starting player at random, they then take one of the Enigma cards secretly, demand of another player a number from 1 to 8, and this will be the Enigma you're trying to convey. You then say loud the clue related to the Enigma, and then you start to create your Enigma. The first person to guess the Enigma correctly gains a point, and also yourself. You can overlay these cards, you can block out a part of the image with your hand on these cards, and most importantly, you can animate these cards. Player then passes to the next player, and they do the same thing. Once every player has done 2 Enigmas, that signals the end of the game, you count the highest score is the winner. We've still got some time, see if you can guess what these Enigmas are. for Imagine when it washes up onto your shorts. But when would that be?
When it comes to the Myers-Briggs thing, introverts and extroverts can usually get along with each other. Thinkers and feelers might each think that the other is kind of weird, but they can still usually get along pretty well too. The judges and perceivers might come to loggerheads with each other sometimes, but it's nothing compared to the conflicts that can come up between intuitives and sensates. This one's about how you perceive information. To seriously oversimplify it, sensory perceivers can't see the forest for the trees, and intuitive perceivers can't see the trees for the forest. Each type tends to run into problems when they go into the other's major area of expertise. So here's the thing. Playing a game is fundamentally an act of imagination. When you play with your friends, you're all creating a little imaginary world together, where you all agree to pretend that it actually matters how many points you score. And this can be a huge problem for sensates looking for a game, especially the ones who are way down at the far end of the scale. If there's nothing real at stake, they feel like they have no reason to care about the outcome. Now, not every sensate is quite that far down the scale, of course. For the ones closer to the middle, a game can be interesting as long as it feels realistic or has some sort of basis in reality. Traditional hex encounter war games can be a good fit here because they have to do with real-world historical events that players can interact with and affect in ways that might have actually occurred if different decisions had been made. Finally, a game that provides a test of real-world skill, something like Scrabble or chess, a mental challenge between players, can feel real enough to satisfy a sensory perceiver. So, what kinds of games do intuitive perceivers like? Well, pretty much everything else. Euro games, American-style games, party games, kids games. Intuitives can enjoy just about all of them. Well, except maybe trivia games. Those are mostly about details, and intuitives aren't so big on dealing with those. Some games have a lot of fiddly rules and details that can be hard for an intuitive perceiver to keep track of unless they're also intuitive as part of the game. For example, in Conquest of Nerath, you've got some things like boats that can move on water, and you've got other pieces like dragons that can fly over land or water, and you've got other things like foot soldiers that can only move on land. Keeping track of which kind of piece can move where might be a lot of details, but because they make sense within the context of the game, intuitively, intuitives can handle them without a problem. And now for the big problem. What if you've got both types in the same group and you need one game to satisfy them all together? There's just no easy answer here, but that doesn't mean there's no hope for mixed groups. Look to the individual members of your group and find the exceptions to the rules. Maybe the sensate happens to like fantasy adventure stories, or maybe the intuitive likes trivia. It's those exceptions that will guide you towards the kinds of games that your group can enjoy together. Next time, thinking versus feeling.
Well, that's that. It's kind of a all over the place board game breakfast with some new contributing, some missing, just because of the origins and all the different things going on. Next week we will be back on schedule on Monday, and then only a week to Dice Tower Convention, which I'm really excited about. You can't see here, but I got piles of games all over the place that are new games and hot games and old games and small games and big games. And we're really going to be jumping into this as hard and as fast as we can. We also got the Origins videos, so there's a lot coming from us. Give us a bit of some time to pump out these videos as quickly as we can. We're all going to work full time on this stuff, but I'm really excited about what's coming out soon. It's a really great time, as always, to be a gamer. Thanks so much for watching Board Game Breakfast. Until next time, I'm Tom Vasel, and this has been the Dice Tower.
Thanks for watching Board Game Breakfast. Tune in each week for your daily dose of gaming goodness with Tom Vasel and all the gang. Until next time, I'm Eric Summerer, and you've been watching Board Game Breakfast, a Dice Tower production, sponsored by Cool Stuff Inc., an amazing place to buy board games. Cool stuff in stock at coolstuffinc.com.